Okay, so we are going to learn how to complete the square. But before we do that, we first have to learn how to factor, or not factor, look at something about factoring. So if we were factoring these two, we know what to do. It's a trinomial with the leading coefficient of 1. So I'm going to go straight to my two parentheses. We need two numbers that multiply to 9 and add to 6. You know the drill. And then the answer is 3 and 3. What I haven't shown you this year, but you may or may not know, is when it's written like this, you can also, if you have the same thing in parentheses, rewrite it like this. So on this one, if we factor it, my two numbers that multiply to 25 and add to -10 would be -5 and -5. So I can rewrite this like so. And the last one, you get the idea. Multiply to 49, add to -14, -7 and -7. I get x minus 7 squared. Okay, couple things about these. These trinomials are called perfect square trinomials. And when they factor, you're going to get the exact same thing in both parentheses. And so you can rewrite it like this. And the reason that is helpful is that is part of the equation or of a vertex form of a parabola. Now, the other thing is when we are factoring these, half of -10 is -5. Half of -14 is -7. Half of +6 is +3. They're very easy to factor. And so if we can create these, then we can factor them easily and rewrite our equations. So this is called completing the square. So the first thing we're going to do is rewrite this, and we're going to say y equals x squared plus 8x, and then we're going to leave a blank, and then we're going to put the 12 there, and then we're going to leave another blank. And our goal is to figure out what goes in that blank. So the way we do that is we take this middle number 8, and we divide it by 2, and we get 4. And then we take 4 and square it, and we get 16. And that number is going to go here. Now, this is an equation. And so to keep our equation balanced, we know it's an equation because it's got an equal sign. But to keep it balanced, if I put 16 on one side, I would have to put 16 on the other. But I don't want to put things on both sides of the equation. I want everything to stay to the right. So the way we keep it balanced is we add -16 over here. Even though this looks weird, just watch and see what happens. We are now going to take this first part and factor it. So I'm going to write y equals, and the way this would factor, what multiplies to 16 and adds to 8 would be x plus 4, x plus 4. So we write x plus 4 squared. So the first part gets factored like so. Then we are going to add these two numbers together here, and 12 and -16 is -4. And now we have our equation. Now that we have our equation in vertex form, we can see that the vertex is the opposite of what's in the parentheses, -4, and then the number at the end, which is also -4. The axis of symmetry, as we've been practicing, is x equals the x-coordinate, which is -4. Okay, let's try this again. So we're going to say y equals, and then we have x squared minus 6x plus blank plus 5 plus blank. Okay, so the way we get the number is we go over here, and we're going to take half of -6, which is -3. But when we square these numbers, they end up in parentheses, and I'm going to get +9. So it actually doesn't matter what the sign is. You're always going to get a positive number when you go through this process. Now remember, this is an equation, and we need to keep it balanced. So normally if I put 9 on one side, I put 9 on the other. But since I'm putting them on both on the same side, the opposite of +9 is -9. Now I'm going to factor this first part. And when I write that, the two numbers that multiply to +9 and add to -6 would be -3 and -3. So I can write x minus 3 squared. But remember, half of -6 is -3. I didn't have to think that hard to get those numbers. 5 and -9 is -4. So my vertex is 3, -4. My axis of symmetry is x equals 3. Okay, let's try it again on number 3. Same thing. I'm going to rewrite it, leaving my blanks. So I have x squared minus 14x plus blank plus 52 plus blank. So the number that goes in the blank, I'm going to take half of 14. Remember, you're going to square it so it ends up positive, so you don't have to pay attention to the sign, which is 7. 7 squared is 49. and that's what goes in this blank. But to keep the equation balanced, since I just added a positive 49, I have to add the opposite, which is negative 49. And so now I'm going to rewrite this as y equals, factor the first part. Half of negative 14 is negative 7, so I know it's going to factor x minus 7 squared. And then 52 and negative 49 would be 3. So my vertex is 7, 3. My axis of symmetry is x equals 7. Okay, this process of completing the square can only be done if the leading coefficient is an invisible positive 1. And the leading coefficient is this number here. It's the first number when you start it. Here we had an invisible positive 1, but here we do not. So when we don't have an invisible positive 1, we're going to factor out whatever we need to do to get it that way. But when we factor it out, we're only going to factor it out of the first two terms. So I'm going to say y equals, I'm going to take out a 2, and that leaves me with x squared. 12 divided by 2 is negative 6x plus blank, close my parentheses, plus 23 plus blank. Okay, now I'm going to fill in this first blank. Half of 6 is 3, 3 squared is 9. But here's the deal. It looks like I added a positive 9, so I should put a negative 9 over here. But I didn't. This 9 is in parentheses, so I really added 2 times 9, which is 18. So on the left side, I put a positive 18. So to balance it out, I have to put a negative 18 over here. So now when I rewrite it, I have y equals 2 times x minus 3 squared, and 23 and negative 18 is 5. So my vertex is 3, 5. The axis of symmetry is x equals 3. Okay, next one. I cannot complete the square unless the leading coefficient is an invisible positive 1. And right now it's a 3. So I'm going to factor out a 3. But when I factor it out, I'm only going to take it out of the first two terms. So I'm going to take out a 3, and I'm left with x squared plus 8x. Then I'm going to write a blank, close my parentheses, plus 55 plus blank. Okay, so to fill in the first blank, I'm going to take half of 8. That's 4. 4 squared is 16. It looks like I added 16, but what I really added was 3 times, 16, which is 48. So on the left side, I have a positive 48. So to balance it, I have to put a negative 48 over here. So when I rewrite it, I have y equals 3 times x plus 4 squared. 55 and negative 48 would be 7. So my vertex is negative 4, 7. And the axis of symmetry is x equals negative 4. All right, another one. You can only complete the square if the leading coefficient is an invisible positive 1. And it's not. So I'm going to factor out a 2, but only from the first two terms. So I take out a 2 here, and that leaves me with x squared minus 10x plus blank, close my parentheses, plus 45 plus blank. So to fill in the first blank, I'm going to take half of 10, which is 5. 5 squared is 25. It looked like I added a 25, but I didn't. I added 2 times 25, which is 50. And so on the left side, I add 50. So on the right side, I'm going to add negative 50. So I'm going to get y equals 2 times x minus 5 squared minus 5. So here's my vertex. Here is my axis of symmetry. Okay, let's try it again. So we can only complete the square if we have an invisible positive 1. And right now, there's a negative. Okay, so that's not going to work. So I'm going to factor it out, but I'm only going to factor it out of the first two terms. So I'm going to have y equals, I'm going to take out a negative 1, and that leaves me with positive x squared minus 4x plus blank, close parentheses, plus 7, not plus 7, minus 7 plus blank. Okay, so the first blank, half of 4 is 2. 2 squared is 4. It looks like I added a 4, but I really added negative 1 times 4, which is negative 4. So the left side is a negative 4. So to balance it out, I have to put a positive 4 over here. So in vertex form, I've got y equals negative 1 times x minus 2 squared minus 3. Oops. So my vertex is going to be 2, negative 3. My axis of symmetry is x equals 2. Okay, to save a little time in the video, I'm going to skip down to number 9. Number 9, we can only complete the square if the leading coefficient is an invisible positive 1. So on this one, I'm going to have to factor out a negative 2. So I take out a negative 2 and I get positive x squared plus, because negative 12 divided by negative 2 is positive 6x, plus blank, close my parentheses, minus 11 plus blank. Half of 6 is 3. 3 squared is 9. It looks like I added a 9, but I really added negative 2 times 9, which is negative 18. So if I have negative 18 on the left, I have to put positive 18 over here. So I get y equals negative 2 times x plus 3 squared. Negative 11 and 18 is 7. My vertex is negative 3, 7. And the axis symmetry is x equals negative 3. All right, let's try a couple real fast where we have to graph. Okay, on number 1, when we complete the square, we need an invisible positive 1, which we have, so we don't have to factor anything out. So I'm going to have x squared plus 2x plus blank plus 4 plus blank. So go back to what we do. Half of 2 is 1. 1 squared is 1. I put a positive 1 on the left, so I need a negative 1 on the right. So now when I go to factor this, I have x plus 1 squared, remember half of 2 is 1, plus 3. So my vertex is negative 1, 3. Axis of symmetry is x equals negative 1. So if I go to graph that, I have to start at my vertex, which is negative 1, 3. This is a parabola, so I'm going to go over 1, up 1, over 2, up 4. And there is my parabola. Okay, one more. I'm going to complete the square, but I can't do that unless the leading coefficient is an invisible positive 1. It's not, so I'm going to have to factor it out, but I only factor it out of the first 2 terms. So I'm going to take out a negative 2, and that leaves me with x squared plus 10x plus blank, close your parentheses, minus 47 plus blank. In the first blank, 10 divided by 2 is 5. 5 squared is 25. Over here, I get a negative 2 times 25, which is negative 50. So since I put a negative 50 on the left, I have to put a positive 50 on the right. So I get y equals negative 2. The parentheses factors to x plus 5 squared, and then negative 47 and 50 is 3. So my vertex is negative 5, 3. My axis of symmetry is x equals negative 2. So when I graph it, negative 5, 3 is here. Now, because of the negative, I'm going to have to open down. And because of the 2, instead of going down over and down 1, I have to go over and down 2. And then I have to go over 2. Instead of going down 4, I have to go down 8, which is all the way down. Ooh, something like that. I don't have my glasses on. I was over 1, but you get the point. Okay, hope that helps, and we will practice completing the square more in class on Monday.